Antarctica is the only continent which isn't a country, doesn't have a government, nor any indigenous tribe living there for ages. The world's coldest continent is also one of the most mysterious places on Earth, and unlike most destinations, you just can't hop off a commercial flight unless you're an elite scientist or an emperor. Exploring the Antarctic is forbidden, even if you could overcome the frostbite-inducing temperatures of -30 degrees Celsius. Additionally, it is also the windiest place on Earth, with snowstorms reaching a speed of 300 km per hour. It can blind you. Antarctica is the world's driest continent, to the extent that you might be even surprised to know that it is considered a desert. There's only 51 mm of rain here, and even when it rains, it turns into snow even before reaching the ground. So in a way, Antarctica is the only place on Earth with little or no influence of humans. But why is it restricted? Who makes these rules? And what else do we know about this mysterious continent?
The North Polar Sea is surrounded by frozen continents. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by frozen seas. The south, the bottom of the world, is considerably colder than the top of the world. The south is as cold as people think the north is. Why did we explore?
Let's begin our story right at the beginning. Around 350 BC, the Greek philosopher Aristotle was among the first people on Earth to say that the Earth was spherical. The constellations that we see in the sky, one of them is Great Bear. They were inspired by the constellation and named the Arctic region Arctos because they knew that the Earth is spherical. They knew that the north and south are like mirror images of each other and will have similar features. So they named the unknown southern region Antarctos. It meant antithetical to the bear, the opposite of the Arctos, and from here the name Antarctica was derived. Humans stepped on Antarctica for the first time in 1890s, but hundreds of years before that, Antarctica had started appearing on the maps. When several explorers went on expeditions around the world, they knew that if they went to the south of the world, they would come upon some land, but they didn't know what kind of land was that exactly, or how big is it. This is why when the French explorers made the world map in year 1530, they had drawn Antarctica like the one on this map. The northern hemisphere is depicted on the left side and the southern hemisphere on the right side. The largest landmass in the middle of the southern hemisphere was named literally Unknown Southern Land. About 200 years later, in 1773, British naval officer James Cook became the first person to go to the south of the Antarctic Circle. He was about 130 km farther from Antarctica when he turned his ship around. Because the place was so perilous, with strong winds blowing and the ship being in danger of hitting iceberg at any moment. When he saw those rocks, he concluded that the Terra Australis does exist. But going much closer to Antarctica was so dangerous that he had famously said that he was sure no one could reach Antarctica. But his words were proven wrong 50 years later. It is quite controversial as to who was the first person to step on Antarctica, because several persons claim to have been the first person. British-American Captain John Davis believed that he was the first person to do so, because his ship was lost and he reached Antarctica. The first undisputed landing was in 1895, when a Norwegian ship called the Antarctic reached its shores. 6-7 members of the crew of this ship got into a small boat and went onto the land. A Norwegian in the boat, Karsten Bosch-Graving, claims that he landed before the boat and was the first person to step on the Antarctica. But a man from New Zealand, Alexander, claims to have been the first person on this boat. And to keep the boat steady, he was the first person to step out of the boat. These two people from the same boat got into an argument about who was the first person to step on Antarctica. There's a funny drawing of it too, as you can see on the screen. Alexander is sneaking out of the boat so he could be the first person to step on Antarctica. And the rest of people in the boat are looking at him in surprise because they wanted to be the first too. After this, the first 20 years of 1900s are known as the heroic years of Antarctica because many expeditions were conducted during this time. There were new scientific discoveries and we have found many new things about Antarctica. It was the first time we found that plants are growing on this continent, as mosses were found growing there. After this heroic era came the colonial period of Antarctica, when several countries tried to lay claim on Antarctica. Between 1908 and 1942, 7 countries claimed sovereignty over this continent, namely Argentina, Australia, Chile, France, New Zealand, Norway and United Kingdom. Apart from them, there were countries like USA, Soviet Union, Japan, Sweden, Belgium and Germany who were conducting explorations and expeditions on Antarctica without claiming any territory. During Hitler's rule in 1939, a German Antarctic expedition was carried out, in which they flew an airplane to take pictures of some areas of the Antarctic. They even dropped metal Nazi swastikas, claiming that the areas where the swastikas were dropped were under the control of Nazi Germany. Surprisingly, during this period, USA diplomacy wasn't very active. In 1924, the Secretary of State in America announced their official position regarding the territorial claims on Antarctica. He said that if any country discovers new land in Antarctica, it doesn't mean that the new areas would belong to the same country. The land would belong to the country only when there are actual settlements in the area, when the citizens of that country live there permanently. But this didn't happen. After the end of World War II, these countries started fighting each other over their claims on Antarctica's land. These countries set up permanent research centers in Antarctica to show that they have a permanent station in that area. And since researchers were living there permanently, they claimed the land theirs. Setting up research station had become a political strategy for these countries. At one point, the British, Chilean and Argentinian bases were so close to each other that it was clearly evident that they were not set up solely for scientific research. These stations were being built for intelligence activities. In fact, the territorial claims of these countries on Antarctica overlap. As tensions between the United States and Russia escalated during the Cold War, people were afraid that the conflict would extend to Antarctica. However, in 1959, the Antarctic Treaty was signed by 12 governments to prevent this from happening. Under the treaty, three key principles were established. First, Antarctica would be used for peaceful purposes only. Scientific investigation would be free for everyone. And the third, that the results of scientific observations would be available to all. This allowed for the collaborative research efforts and peaceful coexistence in the region. Although the treaty suspended the territorial claims of countries with claims on Antarctica, it did not abolish them. Today, countries like New Zealand and Norway recognize each other's claims, while the UK, Chile and Argentina do not because their territories overlap. However, this treaty will expire in 2048, and if not renewed, drilling and mining would be allowed in the future. Several countries including China have been exploiting their oceans near Antarctica for fishing and tourism. However, Antarctica has no police force, army or legal system, making it a political territory where countries collaborate and divide power equally. Do you think we should explore Antarctica more or protect it further? Let me know in the comments below.